Welcome to the Millennial Dream Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Moore. I'm joined today by Geoff Gibson. He's a YouTuber and Substack writer with his channels Geography by Geoff and GeoLex Travel. Great to have you on today.
Thanks, Michael. It's really, exciting to be here. It's fun to always talk about sort of what I'm working on and my channels and everything like that. And there's so much to say. I'm really looking forward to explaining more about sort of my journey, but I'm also doing this if I'm a little scattered right now. I'm doing this literally on the eve of when I take off for another month worth of travel to first Amsterdam and then Morocco. So everything's just a little hectic,
Definitely, especially the night before travel. It's always, last minute packing.
It's like, where's my passport? It's like, I don't know where my passport is, but I definitely need that one thing.
Yeah. So, I'd be interested to hear, how did you get started in your creative pursuits even before your YouTube channels and Substacks?
Yeah. That's a big question. I've always had a penchant for doing, I guess, like side hustles, I guess you would say, you would call them. Certainly this has now become my main hustle, but we can get into that. But going back to, I guess if we really want to go back to it, starting in 2020, everybody's, working from home. There's nothing really going on. Prior to that, I was a very social person. I like to go to happy hours, go hang out with friends. I was always bouncing around Portland, the city I live in, and I couldn't do that anymore. And so I'm like, well, I have all this energy. What am I going to do? And so I started doing, I'd always been fairly good in design, particularly around cartography. I got my bachelor's degree in geography and GIS, and then I had my master's degree in city planning, where I was tended to be the person pulling together these really large, complicated graphics to then show the public of these big projects that the city or state or what have you wants to do. And so during the COVID time, it's like, okay, well, I like doing this. I like designing. I like, playing with maps and making fun maps. So I was like, okay, I'll pull together this really fun map with this data that I know exists out there because that was kind of my job. Pull this data, make this fun map, make it very like artsy and like kind of weird or like quirky or anything, and just sort of throw it out there. And I would throw it out there on Reddit. Generally, the data is beautiful page or map porn page. Those were sort of my jam. And that was really fun. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the process. A lot of my maps ended up going on and doing, I don't know, a few thousand upvotes or whatever you want to call them. But it got to the point where I was like, okay, this is fun, but I'm also not really able to control the story behind these maps, right? Because it's a static thing. It's here's this one thing, you're sending it out there, it has the data, and then it's really up to everybody else to interpret it. And people are interpreting things, especially when you start including sort of the artistic and design things that you're doing. People interpret those in a wide variety of ways. Like I had this one map that was about I think it was illustrating sort of I can't remember the exact data sets I was used, but it was the vacancy rates by major cities with the homeless population count, right? So the idea is to show places that have high vacancy rate compared to the homeless count is, just sort of have that data out there. And I was like, oh, this would be really cool design if I also showed that like really illustrating that one of the big problems we have in the States is that everything's so fractured. Like our policies around housing and affordability and everything is so fractured that it's almost like you took a map of the United States and you just smashed it. It's like a piece of glass. There's a million pieces. I was like, well, I'm going to do that. I'm going to create this, nice United States map, and I'm going to fracture it just like glass. And I happened to pick the point right in the dead center as being the part where it's fractured, and everybody honed right in on that. It's like, well, why are you saying this all originates from, I think it was Kansas? And it's like, that is a good point. And I didn't think about that when I was designing it. Because the truth is Kansas is probably not the the point of where all of this sort of came to a head. So that's sort of what led me, that was one of the big impetus is well, crafting storylines, via writing, which is something I've always done, or via videos where I have more ability to sort of control the narrative. And that was sort of that was the big issue. It's like, okay, how do I control the narrative? So what's out there, and it's like, well, this is exactly what I'm trying to say. But yeah, that's the very beginning. Eventually it dovetails into a bunch of different things like YouTube. And I'm happy to talk about that as well if you want.
Definitely. Yeah. How did when did you decide to take the leap, and what did that look like in the early days?
Yeah, the leap happened in the basically late 2021. So it's right, we're like now a year and change into COVID. I think this is like now we'd all been vaccinated and we all had like a fun hot girl summer. And then Omicron came, right? And it's like, okay, well, it's like, shut down to Electric Boogaloo. But kind of like diet shutdown, because like, supposed to shut down, but not everybody's really shutting down anymore. And that's fine. But ultimately it's like, okay, like, this might be the time to like, I have a little more time on my hand, to start thinking about what this looks like. If I were to actually create a YouTube channel, what does that look like? And it took me a long time to figure out, just to get that first few episodes like mapped out. It took me so long. It took me months to actually like, okay, how am I doing this? And what am I doing? And what am I trying to say? And what kind of channel am I going to be really? And I almost pulled the plug on it. It was probably like, I don't know, November or something like that. I can't remember the exact date, but it was November of 2021. And for reference listeners, I officially launched my channel in like the first week of January 2022. So it was like a couple months before that. Almost pulled the plug. Because I was like, this is really hard and I'm getting nervous. Like, what happens when you publish your first video? I had no idea. And like, you're out there now, you're doing something. And then I was on LinkedIn of all places, and a former colleague of mine from my time as a city planner, we both worked at the same consultant firm, had posted a message on LinkedIn, and his message was, I just want to announce that I started a YouTube channel about urbanism, about cities, and I just hit 1,000 subscribers. And how it was like, it's been so cool. Like, I've really enjoyed the process and everything like that. And in case people are curious, this is Ray Delahanty. He's better known as CityNerd. And so we worked together for a number of years at the same consultant firm. And I was like, wow, Ray's always been a funny guy. I never really took him to be somebody who could create videos and craft narratives, and who really had any desire or penchant to be a YouTube like personality. And it really gave me that kickstart, right? It's like, okay, like this is obviously there's other YouTubers out there, there's other people who launch YouTube, but this was somebody I knew. This was somebody that I could look and say, okay, like I can definitely do this as well. It's not that scary. And that's not to say it's not hard, or it's all that surprising that Ray went on and had a bunch of success as well. But it just gave me that like personal manifestation. It's like, okay, like I just need to sort of do it, because that's all it takes. You just have to you have to create it, and you have to push that little publish button. And then whatever comes next. But you can't just pull the plug because you're afraid. And ultimately that's what it was. I was afraid to do it. And so, yeah, that was sort of the big moment that sort of tipped me over. And it's like, okay, let's actually do it. Let's see where this goes. My first video, like I said, came out in January. It was about, I think it was loosely titled, and I had a completely different name for the channel. The channel at that point was named Atlas Explains the World. The Atlas guy, the guy with the thing.
Yep.
But the idea is like it's also the book, right? So it's like fun play. It's called Atlas Explains the World, and it's like, well, I'll take these big concepts and I'll try and explain them through sort of maps and graphics and everything like that. And the first one was about population density, I think. It's like the power of population density, basically trying to explain like why population density matters. And it was a video idea that I had based on this idea. There are this series of maps that somebody created at one point that was basically like, if the entire world's population lived in the same population density as Singapore, this is how much area of land we would take. And it's like the size of Texas or something like that. And it's like, that's cool. That's an interesting idea. So I think it was something about that. It was like that population density. And I probably created some fun maps or something. And so I launched it in January, and crickets, right? There's just like, I'm not talking like there's like 10 views. I'm talking like there's 0 views aside from the one from me.
Yeah.
Just nothing happening. Nobody's clicking on it. I had what I thought was a decent thumbnail at the time. Don't know what it was. It might still be the original one, to be honest. But there's just nobody watching. It's like, okay, well, these things take time, and you're a new channel. So like, I had like scoped out 5 episodes. So it's like, well, let's keep doing it. And so I released, 4 more. One on, what was my next one? I think one on like homelessness, because again, going back to the map, I think it was specifically talking about California at the time. And obviously California and a lot of states still have their issues with homelessness, but California is the one getting a lot of the attention. So it's like, what's happening? Why is that happening? There's another one on Iceland, why so many people visit Iceland, all this kind of stuff. Anyways, all these videos came out, and like, again, crickets. Nobody's watching any of these things. And so I got like four videos in. So now it's like February or something. And I was like, well, like, okay, this just isn't working. I'm putting a lot of time. And mind you, at this time I have a full-time job, right? Yeah. And social engagements are coming back, right? It's 2022. It's January 2022. It's, it's people are doing stuff. People want to do stuff. I'm like, great. So I'm like, okay, this is taking up a lot of time. It's a lot of energy. I'm throwing my stuff out there and nobody's watching. So like, why would I just keep doing this? Because I don't know if there's like an actual, I couldn't see the 1,000 subscribers that Ray had got. And it's like, okay, maybe this just isn't going to work. And I was like, okay, well, I have one video that's sort of halfway produced. So I'll finish that one up and I'll get it out there just to get it out there, because I don't want to leave it half done, and then I'll just, whatever. I just won't care. And this was a video about high-speed rail. It was like something like high-speed rail can work in these 4 places. This was sort of built on a lot of my work on a project at my consulting firm at the time, which was working on the feasibility study for the Pacific Northwest high-speed rail between Portland, Seattle, and Vancouver, BC. And so it's like, cool, I can sort of use this. I have this sort of inherent knowledge about these projects and how they work and like why they potentially work. And I had this was the business case study. I had the numbers involved too. It's like, well, I can sort of like, at this point, the project documents were public. So it's not like I was sharing secret information. But it's like, I have this information. I have this history. And I put it out there, and again, crickets. It's like, okay, cool, great. Well, I can move on to something else. And so, I go off and I do something else for a few weeks. And then one day I'm like traveling back from somewhere. I can't remember where, but I'm traveling back from like a weekend somewhere with friends. And I'm in the car, and somebody else is driving. And I just noticed like I'm getting like a subscriber. Okay. And in the early, and when you're a very new YouTube channel, you get a message and a notification for every single subscriber. At some point, YouTube turns that off, and I don't know when that number is. It could be 10,000 or something like that. But you're no longer getting any more emails, because I guess YouTube's like
it's too many notifications at that point.
Too many notifications. Yeah. But in those early stages, you're getting every single notification. Like, okay, I got a subscriber. I go and look at my views. I'm like, oh, this one has like 10 views. Okay, so people are watching. Again, my other videos don't have any views yet. Yeah. And so it's like, okay, and then like as we're driving back home, we're a couple hours away from Portland. I just know it's like, okay, it's like 50 views. Oh, okay, cool. You look back again like an hour later, it's like, oh, there's 100 views, and now I have like 10 subscribers or something like that. And then there's comments starting to pop up. I'm like, oh, like what's going on? Like this is cool. And that was the video that I was like, okay, maybe I should try this again because something caught. That video ended up going on to do something like 40,000 views over the next like couple months. It's the power of train people. People like trains. I like trains myself, but they will watch almost any video about trains, I feel like.
A lot of train content on YouTube for sure.
There's a lot of train content on YouTube. And so, it was at that point where I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, like, what is it? I need, I basically took a month off. And I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to relaunch. Like, what is it? What am I specifically doing? I'm like, okay, I'm a city planner, but I don't want to be in urbanism YouTube. That's like sort of a whole niche unto its own. CityNerd, not just bikes, City Beautiful, like, right? These are all very talented people. I don't want to just dissect housing, issues or density or traffic or bus lines or anything like that. That was my normal job. It's not what I wanted to do. It's like, well, the thing I actually love, and the only reason why I really went into city planning is because my geography undergrad degree, there's not a whole lot of jobs in geography. It's like, but I love the world. I love talking about the world. I love these interesting places and cultures and like how people interact and like what they're doing and why we're different and also the same and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, so you had that introspective moment. You kind of looked at, why did I get into the career that I got into? And it wasn't necessarily to be a city planner. It was originally your love of geography. Right,
exactly. And if you look at city planning as a profession, it is just geography on a macro level, right? If you're talking about geography, like we tend to think of geography as like, the state or provincial level or country level or continent level. And city planning is just, okay, well, let's go one more step down to that city, that urban level. Where's the urban, side begin, the rural side, where's the urban side end and the rural side begin and, all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, that's exactly right. I didn't want to just talk about cities and city planning for my side hustle. I wanted to talk about something bigger, something more interesting, something more, I don't know if colorful is the right word for it, but just, I think about city planning as being, mired in so many sort of political policies and like, very wonky kind of stuff. And I wanted something that was more fun, more something that everybody could sort of engage with and talk about and like be interested in, because even if they're not necessarily a geography person, at some point you're like, well, I'm going to make a video about Nevada. Well, people from Nevada like talking and understanding and knowing about Nevada, as it turns out,
Yeah. So you took the month off, to really sit back. And is that when you decided on the name for the channel?
That was the first name change. It wasn't my current name. So I did. I changed it to focus in on geography, right? But I also knew I needed a hook. At that point, I was like, okay, like every episode needs a really solid hook. I had started to learn certain stuff. I started to read stuff. And I was like, okay, well, what's my hook going to be? And I was like, I really like what if questions. What if this happened? What if that happened? What if this? I was like, that could be a fun hook where we take geography and we just frame everything through this what if lens. We really cram it through and explain things through that lens of geography. And so I renamed it. I changed from Atlas Explains the World to What If Geography. Very on the nose, not super creative, but I was like, I'm just going to like really hammer it in. It's like, there's nothing you're going to get from this channel aside from geography and a what if question. And so I did that. And I think my very first video under the what if, I can't remember exactly which one it was, but I had a number of them. And it was something like, I think maybe the first one was like, what if the Pacific Northwest became its own country, right? So talking about Cascadia.
Yeah.
So that has always been a fascinating topic for me. It's like, what happens? Like, what does that look like if the states of Oregon, Washington, and the province of British Columbia broke away and became their own country and called it Cascadia? What would that look like? What would the GDP be? What would the population be? Where would the capital potentially be? And of course, that one did fairly well for the time. I think it went on to do, again, like 50,000 views. And I was like, great. Well, I can keep doing this. So I did. I did a video on, what if New England became a country? I did a video on, I can't remember what the next one was, but the next really big hit for me was I did a video. It's what if the American Southwest runs out of water? And that one exploded, right? That one went viral. I mean, it's probably still, I don't know if it's in my top 20 videos, but I think it's sitting at 1.5 million views, or maybe a little more than 1 million. For that period of time, having, had at that point less than 10 videos out, was, it really launched sort of my channel and sort of people knowing who I was. And it's, it's elevated so much, right? And that was great. Having that sort of momentum gave me my first, 1,000 and then 10,000 subscribers. And so I kept doing this thing, this what if question. And, I did another one that was, what if the Cascadia mega thrust earthquake hits, something that we often think about here in the Pacific Northwest. And that one went on and did 2 million views. And I was like, oh, I'm there. I used to like think of this idea as a creator. It's like the idea of tipping, right? It's like you grow so big and it's like you just tip, and now everything you do is going to be a roaring success because, you've made it. You're this creator person. That is a myth. That does not exist. You are only as good as your last. And so I'd gotten into this thing where I was like, okay, well, I'll just keep making these what if questions. The thing about geography, though, is that there's only so like in the what if frame, there's only so much you can really do with that framework. And I was like creating these really weird what if things and trying to frame them through geography. Like what if like everybody drove electric cars instead of gas? Like what would that do? What if everything run on solar power? And my views went down, right? They really started to tank. I had like this really great, so this is all happening within that first year, right? So if we had that, very slow build up, and I had my first spike in spring, and then sort of, I think the water episode came out in, late May or early June. And then I had my earthquake thing. So I was like great, awesome summer. Felt like everything was coming. And then fall, just like a wrecking ball, just crashed into my channel, and my views, tanked. My average views went down to, probably like 2,000 views per video. I was like, okay, this is, starting to suck again. And I wasn't being consistent with uploading. I was at a new job. So I'd left my old job. I was at a new job, which I was hoping was going to be less overall work. Ended up being more overall work than my previous city planner job. And so I was being inconsistent. I was pulling all the videos together myself, right? All the animations, all the editing, recording, everything. And I was probably working 90 hours, 100 hours a week, right? Because you have to like pull these things together, and then I have to go and work on this regular job, and trying to maintain a social life, all this kind of stuff. And it was like really being run ragged. And so it was like fall of that year of 2022. I was probably sitting at around 30,000 subscribers, and I was like, okay, like I need to make a choice. And the choice is either give this up. It's been a fun ride. I was monetized. I had made a little bit of money. And it's just like, cool, I did it. And like, I can always point to it and be like, hey, look, I was able to do this thing where I got, a few, 1,000 subscribers, and, it's kind of neat. And I go back and I do, my job, right? My city planning job, or at that point, city planning adjacent job, because I was working at a nonprofit. Or the other thing, which is like, okay, I take the leap and I say, well, I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to try and make a go of this. Um, and, I decided to take the leap. I had been saving up money from my monetization. I had been saving that money that I'd been making, and I had been saving up as much money as possible from my job, so I could have like a little bit of like a pile of money that would sort of cushion the lack of a steady paycheck. Um, and in January, I gave my notice. January of 2023, gave my notice to um, my job. I ended up giving them 2 months lead. So it's like, oh, I'll stick around till March, again, to try and cushion that lack of a paycheck too, right? It's like, well, I'll do this, but I'll sort of phase myself out. And at that point, I was like, okay, the what if is not working anymore. What ifs were fine. They got me, a few really killer videos, but it's too esoteric. It's whatever. It's just not working. I need something else. I need to go broader. I was like, so at that point, I was like, well, I'm established. I have a subscriber base. Let's just rebrand as something simple and easy, and just go with Geography by Geoff. The Geo, my actual given name, works really well.
Yeah, it's funny that you just so happen to have the right name for that name. To just the beginnings match up that way.
I like to think it was my name that drove me to get my geography. And I actually believe this because, I just like every other, freshman college student going into college, none of us know what we actually want to do because we're young. And how could you possibly know what you want to major in when you're that age? But I remember I was leafing through. I actually had like a book for my college, my university. I had a book. I was leafing through. It's like, okay, what's my bachelor's degree going to be in? Because at some point I'm going to be done with general education and I need to like actually figure out what it's going to be. And I remember like looking through and just sort of leafing through, and I saw geography. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't know geography was a degree you could get. Because to me, geography was like knowing the state capitals because that's what we all learned in elementary school, right? It's like you have at least here in the States, right? It's like you have your like one class. Otherwise, it's something called social studies, which is like history and politics and government. And
yeah, you think of the student perspective, which is the memorization, but you're not thinking of the production. Someone has to create the map. Someone has to understand the details, make sure everything's placed in the proper locations.
Oh, absolutely.
And choose, and most important of all, choose what should be left out.
Right.
Because
absolutely,
a map can't be one for one to reality.
Right. Absolutely. So I was like, oh, there's a geography degree. And I was like, well, I have the name for it. And this, when I was, however old I was when I was making this decision, I was like, okay, yeah, I like the world. I like maps. I like, learning about this stuff. Why not? And so that's how I picked my geography undergrad degree. Ended up loving it. Ended up loving, GIS and all of the stuff that goes along with it. And sort of the combining of, historical and like cultural, information with physical, like weather systems and climate and everything like that, with like the technical side of like, okay, we learning all this stuff and now let's take all this data and like turn it into something, right? It's like that all really appealed to me. And so, yeah, I that's how I ended up getting my degree. And that's, when I ultimately decided to rebrand to Geography by Geoff, I was like, well, yeah, I have the name for it already.
So you decide to leave your job. You decide to go all in on YouTube. What did that time span look like when you're kind of in the uncertain middle, to, not having consistent employment, to being able to make your creative endeavors actually, fill the gap?
I got really lucky. So early January 2023, I was like, okay, I'm going to rebrand. Like that's the first thing I'm doing, right? It's like the end of the year 2022 is What If Geography. January 1, is now Geography by Geoff. And I had given this new umbrella, I had started to map out like, okay, what are the videos that I can do? How can I explain things? How can I look at regions? And I was looking at like a map of, there's sort of like a night map of the United States. And, you can sort of see, on one side, it's like this strong network of lights and cities, and they're all connected. And, that's the East Coast. And on the West Coast, it's sort of, there's like lots of bright lights, but it's like more sporadic, right? Denver, Salt Lake City, Portland, Seattle, Phoenix, LA, California coastline. And then like you look into the middle, right? And there's just like this big band of dark. Like there's nothing here. And it's like, oh, that's interesting. That's an interesting place. Let's look at what's there, and let's sort of like peel back that onion a little bit. And I was like, well, I can probably make a video about this, and I'll call it America's Empty Belt. Basically like why does nobody live here? And that's not like a trope amongst a lot of geography creators. Like, why does nobody live, in X? And maybe people were doing it before, but this was like one of those ones where I was like, this seems like an interesting thing. I'll just sort of pull together a video about it. It's like, and I think it was like my first video as Geography by Geoff.
And you have really compelling thumbnails for these videos.
Right.
You have basically a giant red zone that covers the area, and this has become a theme of videos for you.
Right.
That's
and this one was actually predates that theme, right? So I didn't know what I was doing really, and I think if you go back and look at that one again, this is way back. It just sort of has like a glowing out bluish yellow outline of the area, which, and we can talk about the red in a little bit if you like, because there's a reason why we all use red, and I'm happy to talk about it. But going back to the video, this is the one. It's like my very first video. I'm now transitioning to being a full-time creator, not really knowing what to expect, not knowing when it's going to be able to fully pay my bills. Obviously, I'm getting a little bit of AdSense money at the time, but not enough. And I'm like, okay, well, let's do it. And the other big thing is like, okay, this is now consistent. It is same time, same day, every single week, and I have not missed a video since. Doesn't matter if it's a holiday week. Doesn't matter if it's, I'm having other stuff come. That video is coming out. And that's when I made the decision. It's like, you have to be consistent. People expect it at certain times, so you have to deliver. So anyway, so this video comes out, and it is just an absolute viral smash sensation. It ends up going on and doing something like 5 million views. Still definitely one of my top videos, though it's no longer my top video. And that was just like, I was like, okay, like I like hit the jackpot, right? Like this was, as I'm transitioning, this is giving me that lift that will help buoy everything else, right? It'll help rise all episodes. And that's not entirely true, but definitely gives you that momentum. And I think, it went on to, 5 million views. It easily doubled my subscriber count from, I think at that point it was like 30,000. I think it was added another 30 or 40,000 subscribers, which seems like a low conversion rate, but I actually think it's probably pretty solid. Most people don't subscribe to things, as it turns out. So yeah, it was so scary for a long time. And then I was like, oh, okay, I think I can actually do this. And then it was just like, okay, let's keep playing around with different ideas. But that idea of like, people don't live here, why, is something that really appeals to a lot of people. The idea that there are places that feel like there should be more people, right? This feels like there should be a city. I mean, it's a question that people ask of almost every region of every country, of the world, right? And ultimately the question is not so much, why is there no people in this specific area? It's more, well, why did people settle where they did, which is, the cities that we have now, the Chicagos, the Portlands, the Los Angeleses, the Torontos, the Parises, XYZ, right? But it became like this really fun way to talk about places and get people to engage in those places and talk about the indigenous history of it, the history of colonization, the what's going on there now, kind of stuff, while still like being like a really solid hook, right? You can almost do that for almost any place.
So you hinted at, the reason you went towards red and other creators go towards the color red. So, if you'd like to reveal it to the audience now, go right ahead.
Yes. There is, so obviously there's a lot to do with color theory, right? So different colors mean things inherently based on your cultural understanding. Um, but there's also a physicalness to colors in that red, the color red, physically will hit your eye faster than any other color. And so as you're scrolling through YouTube, like if you're on the YouTube homepage, you're just scrolling, if a YouTube thumbnail has a lot of red, it's going to hit your eye first, which means your eye is going to notice it before it notices any of the other ones around it, which might not have any red. And that's the core way to drive views, right? You want somebody to look at your thumbnail. And I use this analogy all the time. It's like you're shopping for a house in a neighborhood of a million different houses, right? So you're driving down the street. You want a house is going to be one that's going to catch your eye. And so you're driving down, that thumbnail is the house. So it needs to catch your eye and really like make somebody stop and look. So once they stop and look, they're going to look at that. And then it needs to be paired up with like a title, right? Which is the door to let you into the house, right? To actually fully convert that person into a view, which is the metric that most YouTubers care about. And so it's really about getting somebody to stop and look. And red happens to be the color that will hit somebody's eye first and will cause somebody most likely to stop. It's not always the case. I don't use it all the time, but I do use it a lot, and a lot of people do for that specific reason because it just works the best.
Yeah, you see it in a lot of fine art as well. If the artist wants you to look in a particular direction, they'll use the color red.
Right.
Very commonly, especially a lot of neoclassical pieces will have, red clothing to get your eye to aim in a particular direction. So it makes sense that that would also be adopted by other creators.
Right. And you do have to be careful about using it. So like, because red inherently, is certainly for our culture here in the United States, but also a lot of Western cultures, certainly. Red tends to mean, anger, tends to mean stop, tends to mean negative in some way, right? Like going into the red monetarily. And so it's like, okay, like there are decisions sometimes you have to make. It's like, okay, we're creating this video about this place. To paint it in red, especially, depending on what title we're using, is almost to paint it in a negative way. And sometimes that's appropriate, depending on sort of what you're doing, what story you're telling. A lot of times it's not appropriate, in which case it's like, okay, well, let's lean on another color that works really well as well. And that would be like a bright green or a bright yellow. And those also have their ups and downs, but those would be generally the three. It's like, okay, so red's not working, let's jump to a yellow. If that's not going to work, let's jump to a green. If that's not working, then we need to rethink the thumbnail.
Yeah. And so, in terms of the experimentation for seeing what works in terms of the hooks and the images, do you feel like that's still an ongoing process of discovering what works and doesn't?
Oh yeah. So it's gotten to the point where so it's not just me anymore. So I have my own media company, and I have 2 full-time hires. So it's the 3 of us that we work intensely on Geography by Geoff and GeoLex, my travel channel. And then we also have, a dedicated editor and 2 animators / editors on contract, right? So there's, 6 of us total. And every single video, whether it's for a travel channel or whether it's for Geography by Geoff, it's just okay, let's get our ideas out. Let's figure out what's going to work. And then let's run through, I don't know, 5, 10, sometimes 15, 20 drafts of thumbnails to like see like, okay, what do we think is going to work best? And even at that stage, none of us truly know. None of us know how the YouTube algorithm's truly going to work or really what's going to hook and pull people in. I mean, maybe there's some creators out there who have really nailed it. I mean, obviously you can go up to like the really big ones, Mr. Beast, who, I don't know, has hundreds of millions of subscribers. But I honestly don't even think his whole team truly knows. And because if they did, why would they play with the ABC testing and change out their thumbnails so much? Which is what we do as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Very rarely is the very first thumbnail that we go out with, or the first three, I should say now, because we can do ABC testing. Very rarely are any of those going to be the final ones that work, right?
Mm-hmm.
We watch, we view the stats over the first few hours, over the first day, and then over the first week, and then we're just changing. We're playing around with things. If a video is absolutely killing it, then we'll leave it alone. But otherwise, we're always like, we could probably tweak this and make it a little bit better.
Yeah. And what made you decide on the time of day and the day of the week to do your releases?
Well, so right now it's Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Pacific time. That's for the main episode. And we also have, as of recently, we're now doing 2 episodes a week. So we have Friday episodes as well. And I'm happy to talk more about why and sort of what those are and how they're different. But originally originally when I first relaunched the channel, it hit on Monday. It's going to be a Monday episode. I ended up not liking Mondays so much. So, after about 6 months or something, I think I switched it over to Tuesday.
Because you have to work through the weekend in order to make a Monday launch. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. And that was something I didn't like. I was like, okay. And the reality is I end up working basically every weekend anyways, but having to really scramble, on Sunday to pull together this video. And I was like, well, I could just move it to Tuesday, and then any scrambling I would have to do could just be on Monday, which is great. That's what a Monday is for. Versus a Sunday where it's like, oh, sorry, guys. Sorry, my friends in town. You guys are going out for brunch or something. I can't make it. I have to, sit here at home and pull together this video. So I moved it after about 6 months. And I honestly can't tell you why I chose 2 p.m. aside from maybe thinking okay, well, if I have that Monday scramble and it's still not quite pulling together, or there's some sort of technical issue, I'll still have Tuesday morning to pull it together. I think that's probably why I ended up choosing something so relatively late. And then it's just, you can look at all of these different graphs, and all these different tools like vidIQ will tell you this is when you should post. Outside of something completely, benign, or insane at 2 a.m., the best time to post is just the time that you can be consistent at, because people start to expect it, right?
Yeah.
That's when, and I get comments oh, awesome. I love my weekly routines. I have people on the East Coast are I get home from work at, I leave work at home at, 5, which is when it comes out for them. I'm home by 6 and I start making dinner and I throw on the new Geography by Geoff video. That's their weekly routine. It's that's what you want. People to expect it, to know when it's coming. And also for YouTube's algorithm to know when it's coming, because that also is tracking things in weird and mysterious ways.
Yes, and the unpredictable ways of the algorithm. So you mentioned bringing on a staff. When did that occur? When did you decide, hey, I have enough consistent income, but I need that extra time, energy, and effort back? Where was that inflection point to decide to bring in folks for the technical side of things when it came to creating graphics and helping with the editing?
Yeah. So it was kind of a lighter entry, and I'll explain that, because my first full-time employee was actually my partner, my fiance now, Alexa, who's in the GeoLex channel, right? She's one half of it. Yeah. And so she was my first full-time hire because she left her previous job to come do this. And this is something I was this was what, 2024, middle 2024. I'm hey, I kind of have this, funny idea. What if you took a gap year and came traveling with me, and, we could make fun little videos about the world, thinking that these would just be little side bonus episodes for Geography by Geoff, and we could see the world. And work on it, and it would also, be a business expense because it's something legitimately for the business. And anyway, so it ultimately evolved into the full travel channel, because she wanted to be more involved in it and not just be it, which totally get, not just be the little buddy, along for Geography by Geoff travel episodes. And so I was okay, well, you're leaving your job, let's have you help the business as a whole. Right. So you're going to be a part of GeoLex, you're going to be a part of this. You're also just going to help build the business, which is something that I've been working towards for a long time. It's also hiring a new, like an actual employee is probably the scariest thing that you'll ever have to do if you ever start a business, because now you have people who rely on you, right? Their livelihoods, their health insurance, right? That's all like depending on you generating income and getting views and, getting sponsors and everything like that, so that you can continue to pay them and do all this kind of stuff. So this was like a way where it was less pressure, because we'd always had an understanding. It's like, okay, like if things just aren't working out, like it's not that big of a deal. We're still a unit. We're still like, life partners, now engaged.
Congratulations.
So, yeah, exactly. It's not that scary. And so we sort of continued. We did that in January of this year. So she was the first full-time hire. And so there's a lot of paperwork involved, a lot of forms and stuff that have to go to different, the state and the federal government, all this kind of stuff. And so got to figure all that out. It's not very fun, as you can imagine. But it's good. It was good to do. And then we went traveling, right? We went traveling. We've been traveling most of this year. We hit Japan and East Asia and down to like Australia and New Zealand. And then we just got back a few weeks ago from Europe, where we went, through, the Baltic states and, Georgia and Armenia and France, which isn't out yet. And it got to the point where, as we were traveling, even though we had contractors, right, animators and editors, it got to the point where I was working so much on trying to get everything uploaded and these thumbnails and just managing and pulling all this stuff together, that by like August or something, I realized that we're traveling to all these amazing places, and outside of the time that we are physically going around and, like, hi, like I'm Geoff, like, I'm here in, Istanbul. Outside of those times, like I wasn't seeing anything because I was working. I was just inside the Airbnb working.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, like the business is doing well. Like views are still working. Like they're still coming in. We're able to like keep moving along. Like let's hire a producer, somebody to like really help pull the videos together each week and like handle all of that process, so that it's not just sitting on my shoulders, everything every week to get scheduled, to get, if we have a sponsor, to get the sponsor script going, and, everything like that. It's just like a million things. There's like 100 different like aspects of every video. And so we hired a producer in September of this year. And so, he's now a couple months into his job, and it's just again, very scary, because now it's a level up of an employee. Now this is actually somebody that's like relies on you. But we had also done a lot of the hard work of like figuring out health insurance and like going through all the taxes and forms and everything. So it's like it's been a little bit more of a gradual level up. But then also like having this extra help is like it's so worth it, right? It's like technically my business could be making more money per month, but I'm not able to enjoy anything. I'm not able to enjoy sort of life,
Yeah,
especially as I'm traveling.
Well, and that's the ultimate, work-life balance. And also you want to make sure your content's getting out on time. You want to make sure that things are coming together.
Right.
And, and there's only so much one person can do as you start to grow and you've got more dollars coming in. You've got, you have to negotiate brand deals.
Exactly.
You have to handle the staff that you have, make sure they get assigned. So bringing someone in to kind of, wrangle everything and herd all the cats, so to speak, is important.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's definitely been life-changing. So, yeah, very lucky that I'm able to do this now.
Yeah. And if you had any advice for anyone looking to get in this type of content space, whether it's creating videos for YouTube or doing travel blogging, what would be some of the big advice that you would give them?
I think the biggest piece of advice I can give anybody is, well, it's kind of twofold. The first one is to be consistent. Nobody's going to follow somebody that's, they don't know when they're going to provide more content, when there's the next article coming out, next video, next podcast episode. We are creatures of habit, humans. And so, and we live on very cyclical, weekly, monthly, right, schedules and hourly, right? We like things to happen in like a consistent manner, nice, frequent manner.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're going to be a writer, if you're going to be a podcaster, whatever, pick a day, pick a time. That's when your thing is coming out. And that doesn't mean that's what's going to drive new listeners and new readers, but it's going to make sure the ones that you do have, the ones you are able to get, aren't going to forget about you, because every new thing's going to pop up every week, and it's always going to be sort of a fresh thing that's going to hit their head. The other thing that I would strongly recommend is really hone in on your niche, right? There's a lot of content creators that I see who are really scattered, right? They're trying to be a lot of different things, trying to attract the biggest audience, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is that there's a community for everything out there. It's on the internet these days, especially, right? If your thing is, I don't know, Dodge Ram trucks, then be the Dodge Ram truck guy rather than just the truck guy. And maybe you pivot at some point as you're able to grow your channel. But the goal is to find your people and grow with them. Don't try and be the everything person, because then you're the nothing person. So that would be my two big things.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Geoff, for joining us today. And, where can folks find you online?
Well, of course, YouTube. You can find me online, YouTube. That's just at Geography by Geoff for my education sort of geography channel. Or if you want to follow me around the world, you can go to at GeoLex.travels. That's me and my partner. We are about to leave for, I think by the time this airs, we will still be in Europe. I think we'll be doing Christmas markets in Europe. So people can look forward to that if they're getting into the holiday spirit later this year.
Lovely.
I'm also on Instagram and stuff. That's just Geography by Geoff, Threads, Instagram. And then, of course, there's the Substack, which is great. I post an article there every single week. And it's always something a little bit different, maybe on topic with the video, the weekly Tuesday video, but it's a little bit different. I'm trying to provide a little extra information. And that is it's actually geographicgeoff.substack.com. I don't know why I did that, but I did that. So you can find me geographicgeoff.substack.
The nature of accounts online. But thank you so much, Geoff. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Mike.